Welcome to the round 9 of the Africa Youth Chess Championship 2026 Under 12 Open. This is the final round of what was a very decent tournament by us. We started off strong with 2 wins. We lost the third round, then we won the next couple. At one point, we were 4 out of 5. Then we became 6 out of 8. And this is the last round to prove ourselves and see how well we can do. This game was against Mason Jesse Stern of South Africa, rated 1654, and Sarang at 1463. Now, this game, it was again a very solid game. We did some preparation for it. We realized what opening he'll play, but I'll keep it to that. Let's get right into the game. So, as you remember when we prepared the game, what we prepared before this game is we thought, okay, he's probably going to play knight f3 because that's what he's been playing the whole tournament. And what does he start with? Knight f3. So, our looking at what our opponents have been playing paid off a little. We had an idea of what he's going to play, and he played it. So we did exactly what we planned. We played c5. And here, he played the move e3. Now, this is not a line I think ever crossed my mind, and I'm very surprised he played this. This is not something very usual. I'm just going to show you here. Here, there are plenty moves. There are plenty of moves. There's e4, d4, c4, g4, even b4 if you wanted to play the wing gambit. There's many other options here. There was even just knight c3 if you really wanted to be kind of passive. There's so many kinds of moves here to play. And he, instead of all of that, just opts for the move e3. This is just, it's not great. I mean, it's just passive. It's a bit strange of an opening. So you do the right thing. You play knight f6 as planned, and he plays d4. Now, this is almost like he's playing a French defense. Like, it's almost like he's playing a reverse French. He's playing e6, like in a French defense, it's e6, d5. He's playing e3, d4. I've never seen a knight f3 played like this ever. This is strange, but you did one of the options, and that is to just take the pawn. And I'm a big fan of that option. He took, and here you play the move d5. Now, something a bit funny in this position is like, this is identical to a Caro-Kann. This is identical to a Caro-Kann. Like, if you played e4, c6, d4, d5, takes, knight f3, knight c6, you end up in the exact same position as we ended up here. Almost, right? You end up in the exact same position. The exact same position. So it's almost like you played the Caro-Kann. And he plays the Caro-Kann. He played the exchange Caro-Kann the exact same way I recommended you to. With just, sort of playing like a London bishop, c3. He brings the bishop out. He brings also the bishop out to f4. It's almost like you played a Caro-Kann, right? It's very similar to that, and it's not bad, but it's just not something you're used to. And for something that you're not used to, you played it well. But yeah, sometimes that's just a bit of a strange line. E3 is a very strange line. I wasn't expecting that at all. And I doubt you were as well. Anyway, E3, E6, H4, H3, takes. So this is also something I found a bit interesting. You brought your bishop out, which was the best move. He just kicks it out, and you opt to trade it. One of the computer moves is like, taking it as, again, the second best move, or even the best move depending on the depth of the computer. One of the computer moves, just wanted to show it to you, is bishop d6. And the idea is, if you take, you don't take this first, you take here now. And the reason the computer likes this slightly more is it just trades off more pieces. And this game is looking like a draw already. The exchange Caro-Kann is very often just a draw. But anyway, you play a very good move. Just takes, and this is something that a bit confused me a bit. You played Queen B6. Now, obviously, the idea behind Queen B6 is to target this pawn, right? That's very clearly your point. Um, and so he defends that with Queen E3, Queen E2. Now here, you still have your bishop undeveloped. Um, one of the ideas here at least was to just bring your bishop out here and to just trade them. But you clearly wanted a bit more of a dynamic game, so you played this first. He brings back, and this is something I don't understand why you just played your queen back. This is quite strange. And it's also not a good move at all. Like it would have been much better for you to just bring a rook here. If you really wanted to bring something, there would have been better. It would have been better to bring your rook, because at least then you're adding another piece to the party. You're like activating more things. You're just deactivating your queen. You're deactivating what is your third most active piece, right? You could have either just gone for bishop e7 or rook d8. If you didn't want to put the bishop there, you could play rook d8 and then, play bishop d6 to trade it off. But I seriously just don't understand the reason why you just went there and then back. It's not something I'm quite following. I mean, if you can put in the comments your reasoning, because I'm assuming your reasoning is to simply play a bishop here and trade off. But then why didn't you just play the rook? I'm truly not understanding the idea behind this move. If you can explain what was going on in your head, that'd be helpful. Either in the comment section or through message. Anyway, um, he then castles, and now like you did, you just traded off your bishop, and it's not the worst thing in the world. He brings out his rook, you castle, he develops his knight. You bring your rook out, you bring your other rook out. He establishes this outpost here. Um, Obviously you shouldn't take, because if you take, you get forked and then you lose the game. And you wouldn't fall for that. But anyway, you play this. Now this just completely gives up the game, unfortunately. Um, one of the most common ideas in chess is this idea called the Greek gift. Now, what the Greek gift essentially is, you give away your bishop for a pawn, but in exchange you get a very strong and insurmountable attack often, that the opposition will struggle to deal with. And a Greek gift traditionally happens when you have two or more attackers than the opponent. Your knight is the only thing defending this pawn other than your king. Yeah, and your king does not count as a defender, by the way. Um, your knight is the only thing defending this pawn and also this entire king side, because because of how the pawn structure looks, and your rooks are not able to defend this side, and your other knight is not able to defend this side, so it's not really helpful. And this just gives up the game on the spot. And he spots the first move to the position. Actually, but before I get into that, like, let's look at some other options that you could have played. You could have gone for, moving the rook up. You could have gone for b6. Oh, that's actually a bad move. Sorry about that. I meant to say a6. A6 to prevent bishop here was what I meant to say. Other than that, the computer suggests g6. I'm not a fan of g6. It just weakens your dark squares. I feel like rook here or a6 would have been the two best moves that you could have done. I'm assuming you played here with the hopes of trading and just, getting down to an endgame. But yeah, he spots the first move, which is bishop takes h7. This is the Greek gift. Now here, I'm glad you didn't take it, because if you had taken it, queen h5, king g6, king g8, queen takes f7, king h7, and now he can just take the knight. And he's simply up 2 pawns. Your king is completely unsafe. Eventually he can bring his other rooks like this, perhaps, and you're really on the verge of being checkmated. It's not looking good. You didn't take it, which is good. You played king f8, but your opponent also misplayed this. Over in this position, he decides to trade off his knight. Now, this is a bad move, Very simply for the reason that it removes an attacker. Right? This knight is significantly worse than this knight. This knight is doing a whole lot more than this knight. There's no reason to trade it. But he decides to, a better move would have been to play queen h5. And now you take, because now he takes with the pawn, and if you move out, you threaten mate, almost. Um, if you just play king out, for example, check here, you win another pawn. And again, he's 2 pawns up, and he has a passed pawn, a passed h pawn, which will be very hard for you to defend. He's up 2 pawns, but he's completely winning. Instead, he just trades off, which is not the best. You obviously take back bishop d3. He's still up a whole pawn, which is why he's still winning in this position. You played the best move, g6, good job to prevent the bishop from ever coming back that side. He plays queen f3, you play king g7, good spot. He plays queen g3, you try and offer a queen trade, and for some reason he accepts. What I assume was going down in his brain was he was thinking, okay, I'm up a pawn, I can trade this all down to an endgame and then win with my one extra pawn. But this is just not ideal. Like, it's still slightly better for him, but the reason you don't want to he doesn't want to trade in this position is actually because if he takes, well, now he doesn't have an attack anymore, right? Now let's look at it from your perspective again. This is how you were seeing the piece. This is how you were seeing the position. After this, you can see if we look at all the threats in this. Okay, we see that the knight is out here. The bishop is still just seeing down at this position, seeing down at this h pawn. We obviously can't take because of this fork. But we want to just play a waiting move almost. We can just play h6. That's how you should have seen it from this position. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. This is now the position. You play g6, queen f3, and now he trades the queens. It was a good idea to offer the queen trade. It was the best move, actually, to offer the queen trade. And him taking it was not the best move. What he should have opted for instead was this move, queen g4. Had he gone for queen g4 after, let's say, after this engine line, this is an example, he maintains his attack. He doubles up his rooks on a file, and he's still up a pawn. He has more chances. Your knight is less active. He's in a better shape. But now, instead of that, he opts for this trade, and he plays f4, being aggressive. You play f5. This is not ideal. A better move would have been to, again, play a6. Or if not a6, okay, some of the computer lines are a bit strange. I would have just played like rook h8, if not that. I think a6 is somewhat intuitive, but yeah, this move is just a bit strange. Rook b8 is a bit strange. a6, I feel like makes a lot of sense. Instead, you go for f5. I'm assuming the idea is to just clamp down more on the light squared bishop, but the difference is actually, like I mentioned before, there's a thing known as a backwards pawn. A backwards pawn is a pawn that cannot be guarded by other pawns. In this position, you have one singular backwards pawn, which is f6. However, which is f7, sorry. But by playing f5, you have two backwards pawns. These are 2 pawns that cannot be guarded. And now, f5 also creates a very long-term weakness in the sense that after he plays rook e7 and rook e2, apologies, you have to stick around defending this pawn. Because now you have to keep your king near and one of your rooks near on this pawn, because it will never be able to be defended by another pawn. Meaning it's just a liability rather than an asset. f5 is not an ideal move. Another thing is f5. Your pawn structure already takes away the maximum possible squares from this bishop. If you want to increase the amount of squares you take from the bishop, you have to play a6. There's no other move in here that takes away more squares from the bishop. f5 does not really do anything. You may think, oh, but what if he plays g5? Let's say you played a6 and he plays g5. Well, there's nothing wrong with g5. You just play b5. Or if not b5, you just move your rook again to h8. You get a semi-open file, and even if he decides to double up, what does he see? He can't take this pawn, right? It's a it's a fruitless endeavor. There's nothing here for him. Um, but anyway, f5. He now, like I said, he just brings the rook out, and this is also, I'm not a fan of this move, even though it's one of the top moves. I would have gone for. This is where I'll disagree with the engine. I would have gone for rook here now, or if not rook there, I would have gone for g4. One of the two options. G4 is the best move, but I feel like I would have probably gone for rook e1. Rook e1 now just targets this pawn. You're forced to keep some level of defense, and the only move that keeps somewhat of an advantage is rook knight e5. But then you'll think, okay, what's the purpose of 95? I guess to go here, but it's a bit strange. It's hard to defend as black. Anyway, he goes with the king. You move your rook back to g7. I'm assuming you wanted to play this with the hopes of eventually playing g5 and, getting a passer or something. He plays g5 himself, g4, and you ignore the best move. First of all, let's look at this position once again. Don't get me wrong, knight a5 is very difficult to spot. The idea behind knight a5 is if you play here, and let's say he just wastes a move, let's say he just moves king back, for example, you play knight c4, and you're essentially forcing him to take, because if he doesn't take, and he just defends this pawn, for example, not that way, this way, you go back, and there's just really your knight is now far more active in this position. When it was on this square, it's seeing nothing. Whereas here, after knight a5, and after knight a5, rook here, this position, it sees this square. It gets this square eventually, not right now because your king's in a bad spot, but eventually you get this move of knight e4, and this is a very strong knight outpost, and if he takes it, well, you have a passed pawn. And this passed pawn idea will come up in a lot of the positions that we'll discuss later. He instead now plays g4, and you are in a really tough spot now. You play rook h7, which is the best move, and he blunders the entire game away. What he should have done is he should have gone for g5 check. Now, this is like a clamp. It's clamping down on your position. It's suffocating you, right? And not only that, he has this h pawn. This h pawn that he's up will make a huge difference in his position, because once you escape, he has a move, let's say rook e1, again, the idea of doubling onto this weak deep e pawn. And if you move out of the way, he can walk the h pawn up, and he will eventually, by playing something by virtue of like bishop e2, he will eventually play this move of h5, and there's no way you can stop it, because now after you take, he just plays king h4. Again, I don't expect you to see this entire variation, but I expect you to see this idea of giving up one of the pawns, giving up one of the pawns to create a passed pawn. This is a very common idea in pawn endgames, and maybe we should do a lot more on that. We should read up more on pawn endgames. But yeah, instead of that, he in this kind of a position, it's just slightly, it's better for you, quite frankly. But instead of that, he opts to take. Now, taking is so bad, because now after you take, and I'm glad you took with the right pawn here. I mean, well, it's obvious which pawn you have to take with, but I'm glad you took with this pawn, because now this h pawn is no longer an asset; it's a liability. Because remember, pawn islands. How many pawn islands does he have? Let's count. 1, 2, and 3. This whole chain. That's 3 islands. You have 1 and 2. You have 2 pawn islands. This is an isolated pawn. And what are isolated pawns? They are weak. They are easily targeted. It is essentially like he's no longer up a pawn, which is why the game went from +2 to him to dead equal. Dead equal in this position. You play bishop pawn takes. He plays bishop b5, rook h4, takes, and again, I'm glad you spot this in this idea of targeting this h pawn. And even though now the position may be equal, you have better chances. Why? Because you're the one in the driver's seat. You're the one that's pushing for the win now. He plays king g2 to defend the pawn. You give this check. He blunders a bit. He plays rook g8, 3. Now, I'm glad you didn't just opt to take, because this would have been a draw, and if anything, you'd be slightly worse in this position. The best move is actually what you played. Rook b8 to target this pawn. He defends it. You take this free pawn, and now it's equal, but it's not truly equal. You have a big advantage because of this f pawn. This f pawn should be your key to victory, as we mentioned ages ago in this video. That f pawn is now officially a passed pawn. The thing about a passed pawn is it is worth its weight in gold. It is a very, very crucial pawn. And the closer he gets to promoting, the more difficult it is for him to defend. He now plays rook f1, trying to get this rook trade. You play rook h4, best move, and he completely blunders with this move, rook e1. This game is lost now for him. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a ridiculous move to find. When I saw this, I really wasn't clear to me. You played the move rook c8, which is not completely the worst move, but it's not ideal. There's only one good move here in this position, and it's the move a5. What is the idea behind a5? a5 is like, it has nothing to do with the rest of this position, right? Why would you play a5? Well, the reason you play a5 is very, very simple. When you play a5, and you play something, let's say rook d3, you force a trade. If he decides to take here, you get another passed pawn. You get a connected passed pawn. And connected passed pawns are almost unstoppable in rook endgames. But if he doesn't take and instead play something like king f2, well, guess what? You play this other move of after rook g8, you eventually have this other move of e5. You eventually have this other move of e5 that's coming up soon. Let's say you play something like this. You play e5. And if he takes, you take with your king. And now your king is fully active. Before, your king was stuck. Your king is stuck. It can't go here. And if it goes here, you just check it and it gets stopped. But now, after this, your king is active. You can even opt, like, this is just an example. You can eventually even opt for like a rook trade. And if he goes for the rook trade, you get again the connected passed pawns and you're just winning. It's a very difficult move to spot. I don't blame you for not spotting it. And I'm assuming at this point you were kind of low on time. But a5 was the winning idea. You play rook c8, which is not ideal. And I also don't really see the idea behind it. I'm assuming you wanted to play c5 for a similar idea of, oh, if he takes, I get the connected passed pawns. But this doesn't work because of rook g e3. Remember this pawn. This pawn is now a serious weakness, this e pawn, because it's now a backwards pawn. Backwards pawns cannot be defended by pawns, meaning they have to be defended by pieces. And when you're defending pawns with rooks in an endgame, your rooks will be inactive and passive. They won't be able to do much. So this move saves the day for him because now he knows, oh, you have to move your rook back to defend it. Now, here he blunders again. He plays king g3. You play the right move of rookie. Oh, I spoiled it. Anyway, you play the right move over here of rook e4, which is a good idea. He plays king f2, and here, like I said before, the idea is to play e5. e5 is the winning idea, and the reason e5 wins is again because of king activity. And if he doesn't play that, if instead he just takes the rook, you take his rook, and you are completely winning because of the connected passed pawns. The connected passed pawns wins the day. Unfortunately, you didn't see this one and you blundered it and you take on e3. Um, Now this is just a draw. When there's one rook and equal pawns in a position, it's very often a draw, and this situation is absolutely no different. Beyond this point, there was not much that was here. Rook h8, rook f3, but you know, this is just a drawn game. Um, According to the engine, maybe you could have gone for something like rook h4 here for a slight tiny advantage, but it really wouldn't matter. No one is winning this endgame except maybe like Magnus Carlsen. Um, this is a draw, and this by this point, this is officially a dead draw. And he plays b4. Now this entire position is locked. Nothing can move forward. This is a closed position. Nothing can move. Um, you try and force a trade. It doesn't work out. You push your pawn, and yeah, now no one can advance. There is zero pawn moves that can be made, except this h pawn. But that h pawn, even if it moves, well, guess what? It's you can't do anything. You can't win it because you'll always be in time to defend, and you just repeat moves for a draw. Now, this is not a bad game overall. Um, if we look at the report as well, you this was a bad blunder. I will not lie to you. This is a pretty bad blunder. Um, you should have considered just a general improving move when, especially when you see a lot of pieces coming onto the king side and you don't have much on your own king side to defend. You should always look for ideas like this bishop sacrifice. Um, Excluding that big mistake, however, the rest of the game you played pretty solidly. But I feel like in endgames you had a bit of time trouble. Otherwise, okay, this a5, the a5 idea is quite hard to find. I won't lie to you. But this idea here of e5 should have been spotted. Absolutely. If you'd spotted this e5 idea, you'd just be winning. Um, you can, like, for example, here, if he now forces a trade again, connected past pawns, nothing he can do. Um, you could have spotted e5. But I'm assuming again you were low on time. You haven't had much practice on endgames as much as we wanted to. We did a little bit of rook endgames, but rook endgames are very vast. There's always stuff to learn there. Even I have so much to learn there. Um, but you know, not a terrible game. You played decently. You got a draw. You gained quite a bit of rating from this. You gained, I think, about 15 rating points from this draw, which is not bad. Meaning you gained 15 this game. I think you lost 10 and 10 overall. I think you're minus 5 to 10, somewhere around there. You're minus 5 to 10 rating points. Which, may sound bad, but genuinely the tournament that you played was quite good. 6.5 points out of 9 in Africa Youth. Now, generally, that is enough to challenge for at least the third place. At least, usually. But since there were just so many people playing this year that there was too many people that could just hoard points at the start, and then it was difficult for us to break through is after that first loss. But um, overall, very solid performance. 6.5 out of points is the best I've ever done as well. Like I did 6.5 as my best, and that got me fourth place, and it 6.5 got you 22nd. Usually like I said, 6.5 is enough to get you top three or at least top five. But since this year there was over 200 participants when there's usually like 80, um, a lot of people were able to hoard points early, and prevented you uh from winning anything, any of the medals. But you are only 11. You still have a year in this under 12 category. You have a very good chance next year. If you're already getting 6.5 points this year, you have a very good chance next year. You can keep improving and gaining rating, and I just know you'll do great. Um, Overall, key takeaways from this tournament. What can we think about it? Well, um, first of all, I would like to say I'm very happy with this draw, even though you had a chance to win. Like, it was a solid draw against a slightly higher rated player. Um, you did a good job in keeping your nerves in the second half of the tournament. Um, you really stood on business, and you managed to pull through and stay consistent, and all your performances that I recorded, except the third game, all your performances were all 90 plus accuracy. You played very well. In terms of chess quality, you played very well, no doubt about it. Um, Improvements that can be made, our end games need to be better. I feel like our openings were great. Our openings were our strong point. We performed every single time in the opening. Um, there was never a point in the opening where I felt, at least from my perspective, from what I saw, there was never a point in the opening where you felt completely lost. Like when I say lost here, I mean like you were confused about what to do. You sort of always had an idea because of how many variations we talked about. Um, you always seemed somewhat confident in how you approach the opening. Your middle games are also usually top quality, apart from in this game, this one mistake. Um, Apart from this one, you played very well in the middle game. Um, but yeah, end games I feel were slightly sloppier than they should be, and I feel like that was one of the things holding us back. We could have gotten, I'd say, 7 points at least if we had gotten that draw versus Rutherford and Drano. But even 7 points wouldn't have changed much. You would have become, instead of 22nd, you would have been around 13th, and you would have gained slightly more rating, but it wouldn't have changed anything much. Um, the biggest issue is our end games. But genuinely, very, very good performance. I'm very happy with how you did. Like I said before, this 6.5 is the best I ever did in Africa Youth. 6.5 out of 9 is the best I ever did in Africa Youth. It's a very nice performance, and not to mention, as far as I saw, out of everyone that participated for Botswana this year, you did the best in terms of points. So you should be proud of that. You should hold your head high and say, I did my best and I did the country's best, right? Because you didn't just represent yourself, you represented Botswana, and you represented Botswana proudly. You did a good job. You earned your stripes, as the Botswana National Sports Commission will say. You did good job. Um, yeah, I really love teaching you. And I'd like to keep teaching as well, at least until I go. Um, if there's any more tournaments that are there, we can always prepare and learn. If there's any more questions, even if after I go, if you have any questions you just want to ask me about chess, I'll always be willing to respond. And if I can make a video, I will make a video. Um, yeah, honestly, this is very nice tournament, and we're only gonna keep improving, keep pushing. Um, yeah. Until next time. Good job, Sarang.